was the first marine biologist? Definitely wasn't me. We'll tell you on this episode.
We get some rum and beer, expensive, put in a reindeer, so you know we're gonna party till
Welcome
tomorrow.
to the Marine Conservation Happy Hour. Welcome back, Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew and Dr. Craken. Hello, it is so great to have you here. How are you doing, Dr. Craken? You just had a birthday.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little older now.
Oh, no!
A few more gray hairs in my beard.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. You know, that's sad because I just get younger each year. But Dr. Craken, you were in Williamsburg for your birthday.
As you can tell from the podcast, I'm a bit of a history nerd. And so a few gray hairs in my beard, history kind of links into what we're talking about today, about the first marine biologist in history.
I hope it was a woman, Dr. Craken.
No.
Oh, come on.
Wasn't, unfortunately. Although the first person called a scientist was a woman.
Okay.
But I'm going to talk about the first marine biologist. So how long ago do you think we'd be talking about the first marine biologist?
Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, honestly, the indigenous people were actually the first marine biologists, right?
I guess that's probably true, yes. That's probably true. Okay, so the first marine biologist who wrote stuff down.
Okay.
That we know
Western.
Western, yes.
White Western?
Yes, white.
Okay,
Well,
all right.
olive-skinned, probably.
Oh, okay. So they have some Middle East coming in, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right. What is it? Mediterranean?
Mediterranean.
Right.
Probably better known for philosophy and so forth.
Ooh.
Actually, we have a statue of him, and he kind of looks like Santa. In fact, he looks a lot.
No way.
He looks
Stop.
a lot like my father, in fact. And I can imagine him with the white beard and the hair. So the person we're talking about is, in fact, someone called Aristotle, who was born in about 380 BC. Oh, gosh, that's 2,400 years ago he was born. He's actually born in a part of what's now Turkey, which was part of the sort of Greek area back then. So he probably would have been olive-skinned and as a sort of Middle
Very
Eastern,
mixed.
Mediterranean
yes,
looking.
Absolutely.
And he was a son of a doctor or a physician back then. And let me just tell this story. So this young man, he was a bit of a golden boy, really. Apparently he was a really good athlete. He did a lot of track and field. He played in the games a lot and very good at the old discus and running and what have you. But he was also a really, really big nerd. And he was sent off to the academy, which is like one of the first universities ever, to study at the age of 17, when most people went to university at about age of 20s. So he's a real golden boy. In fact, his professor used to call him the brain or the walking library as a nickname. So he was super, super smart. And his professor, his main tutor, was someone called Plato, who you've probably heard of, very famous for philosophy and so forth. And he was kind of like Plato's golden student. Studied at the academy, and then Plato died, and so he was up for promotion to basically run this school. But there was a huge amount of jealousy about him, and he didn't get the job, and it went to some mediocre mathematician who was just very, very good at the politics and so on. And his colleagues were like, hey, we don't want to have the brainy guy here, So he went off, first of all, to an island called Assos, and then went to the island of Lesbos, where he met up with someone who basically became like his research assistant called, I think it's Theophrastus was his name, a younger fellow who was really, really into botany.
Okay.
And Aristotle had always had an interest in like the natural world. There wasn't anything like science then. So they had what was called natural philosophy, looking at how the natural world worked. And so on the island of Lesbos, which was really quite a cool, cultured place, it's where the poet Sappho had lived. There were a lot of women on this island who came there to sort of hang out
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons. But it was a very beautiful island. And Aristotle and Theophrastus really, really got into science,
Hmm.
particularly marine biology. So while he was there, he started documenting various different marine species and finding out about their science. So he documented about 500 different marine species to start with. He also realized that whales and dolphins were mammals.
Mm-hmm.
He realized that some marine species lay eggs and some marine species lay eggs but keep them inside themselves, like a lot of the sharks do. He realized there were two different types of cetaceans, that there were toothed whales, and then there were the baleen or filter feeding whales, the mysticeti whales. And he also went around the Mediterranean with a great big piece of rope and a bit of lead on the end, measuring the depths of the ocean.
Oh, cool.
So he was the first oceanographer as well as the
Mm-hmm.
first marine biologist.
Sounds like it.
So he did loads and loads of science there. As I said, so he was the first marine biologist. He wrote this all down. A lot of the stuff that he wrote was absolutely dead on and very impressive for the time because, 300 and something BC, you're not talking microscopes available here. You're not having
Mm-hmm.
scuba gear or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then he became quite famous and he was called away to become the tutor of a young prince of Macedonia called Alexander. Now, Alexander was like a total frat boy. He liked going out drinking. He liked hanging out with the other boys in various different ways, but ended up becoming very famous. In fact, so famous, they ended up calling him Alexander the Great.
Mm.
So he basically was like the most famous person in the world's tutor. He made lots and lots of money, took that money, and then set up his own special university called the Lyceum. And unlike the other university, the Academy, in the Lyceum, he insisted on having public lectures about philosophy and natural science to
Oh,
people and about
public.
maths and things like that and physics.
Neat.
So he insisted on having lectures for the local people, and he also insisted on writing his books in a way that normal people could understand and read and discover about.
Mm-hmm.
So he also is one of the first, or probably the first, science communicator, as well as being the first marine biologist.
Just tick it off on all the things that he does, huh?
Yes. He did get a few things wrong, though. He did think that eels spontaneously generated because they couldn't work out where baby eels came from. And it wasn't only till very recently, relatively, that we found out that they actually spawn in the really deep ocean. And that's where all the little baby eels come from. And then they swim up the rivers. So
Mhm.
there was no chance that they're going to see any baby eels or eels breeding because they were doing that at like a mile under the ocean. And
Mhm.
that's way beyond what the ancient Greeks do. But yeah, Aristotle, first marine biologist, big nerd, first science communicator, and looked kind of like Santa.
Mhm. But Plato never was involved in that at all.
No, Plato wasn't terribly interested in natural
Natural,
philosophy.
yeah,
Yeah,
just
in
too
fact,
dirty.
some of the philosophers at the academy kind of poo-pooed Aristotle for being interested in the natural world. Like, who cares about the natural world?
No
We want to talk about
way.
humans. Humans are more important.
Stop
Blah blah blah.
it.
He also realized that plants were living things as well. So that's another thing. And he also kind of started the field of botany too, particularly with this research assistant friend of his who basically followed him from then on, kind of became like his
Mhm.
adopted son.
Hmm.
But
Really
it was very, very cool.
interesting.
He was also a single dad for a long while as well. He got married.
Aristotle?
Yeah, he got married. His wife sadly died in childbirth, and he took his
Really?
daughter off to the island of Lesbos and raised her as a single dad until he found another girlfriend a bit later in life. And then she had a stepmom and he had a son. He had two kids. But yeah, he was a single dad for a long time.
Wow, what happened to his son?
Oh, his son basically ended up sort of following him and becoming a bit of an academic-y nerd.
But not a naturalist.
I think he did. I think he did follow on with his a lot of what his
Environmental.
father did, but
Mhm.
there were some writings. I think he was a bit more sort of philosophy.
Philosophical.
Yeah, a bit more
I know
philosophical.
that
Yeah.
sometimes, some days I can say that word and some days I can't. I'll tell you that. That's the truth. I was like, yay, philosophical. I can actually say that word today without getting my tongue twisted.
Yeah, I can't pronounce his son's name, but it starts with Nico, so let's just call him Nick. So young
Nick.
Nick, I think, was a bit more of a philosopher.
Love
There you
it.
go.
Love it.
First marine biologist, looked kind of like Santa, kind of a cool, interesting dude.
Hmm. So awesome. All right. Thanks, Dr. Kraken, for telling us that history. And for everyone that's listening, I hope you enjoyed that episode. And thank you so much for being part of the Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew. Hey, Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew. Don't forget to hit subscribe and follow us for future episodes. And also refer us. We'd love it. We would also like to hear from you. So please contact us on social media, or you can email us about a topic that you're interested in hearing about. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, or you would like us to come visit your science facility and do a live episode, email us at info@absolutelysmashingllc.com. This podcast was edited and produced by Absolutely Smashing. The music is produced by Jolly Shore Leave. Thank you again for listening, and we couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for being part of the Marine Conservation Happy Hour crew.